Hi guys, my name is Julia. Welcome to Book Time. Today I'm going to be doing a wrap up of the books that I have read so far this year. So it's basically my January, February, March wrap up. I haven't read that much, so I can condense it all into one video, which makes it easy for me. The first one I read was Nevermoor. Finally jumped on this bandwagon and I was really glad I did. It was so good. So this Jessica Townsend is Australian, so I'm very proud that she's been so super duper popular all around the world and that these books have done so well. I bought them because I sort of put off reading them because I was like, oh, they're so popular. I wonder if it's just hype and like, am I going to spend money if I want to buy them? Am I going to spend money on books and then not like them? But then I saw that with the first two books in the series, they were releasing the paperback versions. And I didn't like the covers as much. I really liked these beautiful hardback ones. I was like, well, I better buy them before they sell out. So I'm glad I did. I read the first two, so I guess I'll just talk about them together. Or this way. Which way does it turn up? Is that the right order for an audience? Don't know. If you haven't heard of them, which I'm sure you have because every booktuber has been talking about them, they're a middle grade sort of fantasy adventure series focusing on a girl called Morrigan Crow. And basically in the first book, she goes through all these trials to try and get into what's called the Wondrous Society, which is, I still don't really know, but it's like this magical society thing. And she gets to go to, like, they provide an education for her and stuff, like a magical kind of education. And then the second one is working out, like, while she's in school, working out what her specific talents are. That doesn't sound very interesting or dramatic, but it actually is really good. Yeah, I really liked them. I thought they were real page turners. I really liked the character. Well, I really liked Morrigan. I thought she was really well developed. So with the first one, I did feel it was a bit, and the second one really, a bit of a mishmash of other very popular series. So in a lot of ways it felt like Harry Potter, like they go to this magical secret school that has a secret, like, that has their own private kind of secret train line, and you got to get to the platform in a special way, stuff like that. So I was like, yeah, that's really cool, but it didn't feel particularly original. There was like a lot of steampunk elements. Sometimes it felt a bit like Doctor Who, particularly this character Jupiter. He reminded me a lot of Matt Smith's version of the Doctor Who, which is okay because he's my favourite Doctor. Yeah, so sometimes it felt like a mishmash of other popular stories, but it was still really fun to read, and I cannot wait till my kids are old enough to read them, which is like many years away, but whatever. I think it'll be super fun, and I look forward to the next ones. Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're perfect. I feel like a lot of the secondary characters aren't like that well developed, but the world building is really fun. It's just, they're really fun. They're really fun. So I recommend them if you like middle grade and haven't read them yet. So they were the first two. The third one I finished finally was My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. This was awesome. Pretty intense and depressing. I found it so, as someone who has struggled with mental health issues on and off. Because this is a story of a woman who basically takes psychotropic drugs, like prescription drugs, for a year to try and stay asleep, in order to recover from various traumas she's experienced in her life. And she, the whole book is also, it's set just before 9/11. The whole book is also kind of a commentary on like the American optimism, like pre 9/11, and like in rampant capitalism and stuff, and how ultimately that didn't do anything for them in the end. So yeah, it's kind of bleak, but it's really good. I found it really interesting and really well written, really good character development, not just of the main character, but of her best friend. Or really good, even though the best friend, I wouldn't say she developed a lot, but like it was she was a very full character. And it's also really funny, like even though it's super depressing and lots of dark stuff happens, it's bug. it's also, yeah, there's a lot of black humour in it. So this is the first of her stuff I've ever read, so I really want to read more because I know her short stories have been super popular on BookTube as well. So I do recommend that one. The next one I read, it wasn't actually this whole book, The Selected Writings of Edgar Allan Poe, but it was his first, maybe only novella that he wrote, called The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym, which I read because I teach it at uni in a second year class on American literature. And I've read it heaps of times. I didn't quite get to the end, but I nearly did. And it's good. It's a sailing adventure story, but it's also gothic, gets really gruesome, which the students always like. And it's very revealing of a lot of the anxieties held by white Americans living in the South during the 19th century. So it's quite a problematic book, a really problematic book in a lot of ways, to do with the representation of race, but it's also I find it useful for talking through kind of like the mindset, I guess, and a lot of the issues around slavery and what was driving the racism at the time. It's a good book to discuss. Pretty hard to read. It gets pretty dry in the middle, but the first half's great fun till it gets really weird. So there's that one. Next one I read was also for teaching at class, was The Scarlet Letter, Nathaniel Hawthorne. I'm sure pretty much everyone knows the story. It's about a woman, Hester, who has she's married, but her husband's in England and she's been sent to the New World in America. So it's set like right in the first colonies in Massachusetts. And she doesn't know if her husband's alive or dead. In any case, she has an affair with someone and has this baby, and she basically gets shamed by the town and punished for the rest of her life, which is pretty awful and depressing. But a whole lot of other stuff happens too, and it's kind of about like how social ideas of what sin is or wrongdoing is affect people, like affect individuals and affect society. I really love it. So if you haven't read it, I recommend it. It's not like a super easy read, because like in the sense that it's not a normal narrative in the way, it's not told or narrated in the way we're used to reading books today. It's much more like just a description of this terrible situation kind of from different perspectives, but I like it a lot. So it's that one. And the last one I read was awesome. It was a new book by an Australian writer called Carly Findlay called Say Hello. It's non-fiction. It's kind of like part memoir. The tagline here, How I Became My Own Fangirl, a memoir and manifesto on difference, acceptance, self-love and belief, which I think is an apt description. So Carly, she's got quite a high profile blogger and a journalist, I suppose, in Australia. Like, she writes a lot of articles. And she's a disabled writer, so she has a skin condition called ichthyosis, which has, there are lots of different types of it, but the symptoms she experiences means she gets very sore skin, and her skin's very red. I don't know if you can see. And so essentially this book, it's called Say Hello because she explains how a lot of the time the first thing people will say to her is like, oh, what happened to your face? Like, just really horrible, ableist, invasive comments and questions, like rude comments and questions essentially. And she's like, well, why don't you just say hello like a normal person? Anyway, it's really cool. So it's sort of like a memoir about her growing up with ichthyosis and, you know, how she manages it as an adult. But it's more about, I'd say this book is half directed at non-disabled people about like how to be a better ally for the disabled community, how to be a better feminist ally in particular for the disabled community, how to engage sensitively and appropriately in a way that basically but like they can tell, like disabled people can tell their own stories. Like, it shouldn't be about non-disabled people doing things on their behalf, if you know what I mean. But it's also a book, I think, and she says explicitly, directed at other people with a facial difference, or with ichthyosis specifically, because she says like a number of times that growing up she didn't know anyone else with the condition, and she wished that she did, and she would have loved a book like this to know that she wasn't alone, and that you can, like, you are not defined by the non-disabled world's perception of you. Like, she's like, I lead a full happy life, I don't want a cure, I want to educate people, and most importantly she wants to help other, you know, like she does a lot of work with kids who have facial differences. Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. I found it challenging too, because, you know, normally I consider myself like a good ally and a good feminist, but it's just goes to show you can never read or learn or research too much or stop learning. So it was really good. It made me think about a lot of things, and I'll definitely make changes in some of the stuff I do. It's a really generous, warm book that gives a lot when, you know, she has no responsibility. There's no onus on her to do all this educating for non-disabled people, but she does it because she wants her own community to be better represented, to be able to fully participate in society. Yeah, it's really good. I recommend it. I think that's it. Yeah. Not true. There was another book I read. So this is my dilemma. I don't have it with me. I'll put a picture of the cover up here. It was the first book called Over Sea Under Stone in the Dark is Rising sequence, which I think came out in like the 60s, maybe earlier. It's a British children's series, magical sort of adventure series, really cool, and it's got stuff to do with King Arthur and magic and stuff in it. Anyway, I read the first one, which I really loved, and I'm going to read the rest of them. But I don't have them as individual books. I have them in one big bind up. And so I'm unclear whether, like, because I've read the first one, do I count that as one book read this year? Or do I have to wait till I finish the whole bind up before I count it as a book? Hopefully the stuff that other booktubers get anxious about too. So please let me know what you think, because I don't want to feel like I'm cheating by being like, oh, I read Over Sea Under Stone, but it's like, but my actual physical book is all 5 books together and I haven't finished that. So anyway, let me know what you think about that, and I'll talk about it more next month when I finish the whole thing. All right, guys, I hope you're all having a great week. I would love to hear what you're reading, and we'll chat soon. Bye.